After we finished up North Carolina, the next thing to do was track bass. We recorded it here at Ben and my house in Tennessee here. Good old Nashville, Tennessee, oh Lord. The main tracking room, which is the room we're in right now, is pretty small. We didn't really have a whole lot of space to work with, but we didn't necessarily need to.
It's an easier way for us to do it. Like I was saying, like drums are a really hard thing to nail down by yourself, but with a lot of technology nowadays, it's pretty easy to make a record at home.
You know, we were really excited to actually have a base of operations.
Why did you guys do bass before guitars?
I think, like I said, I think it's really important to have a solid rhythm section. I think if that's not there, pretty much whatever you do on your album isn't going to sound good. If your bass and your drums aren't super, super tight and locked in with each other.
We tracked bass first to make it easier on guitar and to lay down the foundation and to kind of lock in with Ben. I feel like it's more important to get a really good bass tone first than a guitar tone and have your guitar tone kind of fit in with your bass tone instead of the other way around.
Quentin has really taught me the understanding of the best guitar tones that I like are mostly from the bass rather than the actual guitar. So this time around we made it a really big emphasis, like bass has got to go first. And once we have a really solid bass tone, then we'll do guitars. The fact that we did our due diligence into getting that proper bass tone created a sense of ease when we had to do the guitars later. And it was essential that we had to do that for the tone that I and Cameron and Quentin were looking for. When they had to lock in, we wanted it to sound like almost like one instrument.
It plays a pretty big part in how your mix ends up turning out. And we wanted something that was full, and we wanted something that really gelled together. So we started kind of from the bottom, from all the root elements with drums and then bass, and then we moved on from there.
In the times that I was present in the making of the bass tone, it was relatively easy because Quentin had done his research and he knew pretty much exactly what he wanted.
We didn't end up miking up the bass this time or anything like that. We went straight into the dark glass and then went right into the Focusrite Pro 40 preamp. We were looking for something that was going to be thick, something that was also going to be able to shine and pop out during parts that it needed to. And that's the reason for the purchase of the dark glass. The dark glass is an amazing pre. It adds like a saturation and a power to bass that is a little bit more difficult to get when you have separate modules. It made it a little bit more foolproof for our recording process. This tone really kind of like fits in the middle of warm but aggressive, and I like that, especially since I'm playing on fretless, and fretless is already a really kind of like odd instrument to have in metal because generally warmer timbre because it doesn't have frets. There's not as much metal, like metal harmonics and overtones that you have to deal with. It's a generally more rounded off sound. The intonation on those bitches is fucking hard. Like fretted instrument players, you got it so easy. You don't have to necessarily worry about like microtones.
I ended up really enjoying that kind of process of coming up with the tones, of how we could go back and forth from coming up with these silky smooth fretless bits into these super gritty like riffs.
Yeah, I'm really happy with the bass tone. I just enjoyed the grit of it this time around a little bit more, just a little bit fuller sounding, I guess. And we're very conscious of dividing up where the bass needs to sit in a mix versus the guitars and drums and everything.
What was your approach for writing bass?
All of the writing really depends on what song it is and how it sounds, and usually something will come into my brain and I have this notion of what this is supposed to sound like, and like I need to be more percussive here, I need to be more rhythmic here, or I need to like play a lead, or I need to play like a fill line. I really just look at every part and think about what needs to be there and see if it works, and then try a couple different things and then rinse repeat. I feel like in the composition, that's really what hits people the most, is kind of like the ebb and flow on the foundation of the bass and drums. Like wherever they go kind of will direct where the guitars go. Like in sticking with the idea of playing what the composition needed, like I had to really like step outside of like comfort zone. You have to be very discerning of what you write and put into a song, because if it's something that's literally impossible, then you're just wasting your time. But you want to do something that's going to push you to do something new and advance you as both a player and you as a band. Generally, just wanted to feel like I was still playing bass and I wasn't noodling all over the place and jerking my dick all over this record. Like, just, like, I hate that.
He had a lot more input than he did on Empire Complex. Not that we intentionally didn't give it to him. It was just like the EP was so rushed and everything. Now that we actually had time to like sit down and have a better focus on songwriting, it was really awesome to have a lot of his ideas come out.
What was it like tracking bass for you?
Stressful. During the tracking itself, it kind of reflected that writing process where it was like, okay, get this done quickly. It's one instrument. We still have a lot of stuff to do. Like, I wanted to get it done.
It was basically me and Quentin locking ourselves in the room for a few hours every day and just kind of going at it. I engineered a little bit, well, most of the bass. He would do some stuff when I wasn't here or couldn't be here.
As far as like the actual physical execution of tracking goes, there are some parts that were annoying as fuck. Like, there are riffs that are all over the album that annoyed the piss out of me. And I'm a very angry tracker. Like, whenever I fuck up a take, I will yell. And I will yell a lot. And it's just a constant thing where you sit in the room with me, and if you have to know that whenever we're tracking, this is just going to happen. And it's not because of you, it's because of me. I'm yelling at myself and the part and myself because I wrote the part.
Go to the street that is right there.
Fucking son of a whore. Fuck! That was a good take too. God damn it. God motherfucking damn it. Let's do it again.
The existential dread that occurs while tracking is like severe. Like, I'm like, oh shit, people are gonna listen to this, and my take is gonna be immortalized as being the take for this song.
There were just some parts that were really agitating, and I had to do several times over, and there are some parts that are very technically challenging.
Yeah, he's, I think everyone is kind of a bit of a perfectionist, and he is definitely no exception, which is a good thing, you know. I mean, it can get, you know, kind of crazy in the moment, but in the long run, you know, it's for the best, so you just kind of push through and, you know, do what needs to be done.
I overall like what I played and everything. I enjoyed the composition, and I think it all works, because I'm really not focused a whole lot on the individual bass parts on this album. It's really just the composition of the overall song, what that sounds like, and that is what I want to like, that's what I want to shine. I don't want an album where there's just one focal element. I want the focal element to be the whole song, and finding that balance is important, and I'm proud of how that's turned out.
I learned what a great fucking bassist he is. I mean, really, that's kind of the biggest takeaway. You know, your band is only ever going to be as strong as its weakest link, and you know, I don't really feel like we have one, and it's awesome. I know it's really hard to find good bass players and creative bass players. I think is the more challenging thing to kind of find. But his sense of melody and everything is just really, really awesome. It's really cool to be able to work with him and come up with some cool ideas.
I learned how essential the bass is in a production. I'll be honest that I had a vague understanding of it when we did the EP. I'm such a guitar player frame of mind that I'm used to bass just locking in with the guitars, and that's all you need. This was the first record where I felt like it breathed for once. It really did its own thing. Every now and then it would lock in to prove the point of the groove, but for the most part, like, it really had its own voice. And it taught me how essential it is in any production.
Well, I have ideas for your future album production. That would be one of the biggest things, I think, is just knowing what I want to do differently based on how this turned out. I also learned that you can't self-depreciate too much. Like, there's a healthy amount of criticism, or else you'll end up falling into a depressive slump when there's not enough time for that bullshit, and it doesn't help you get anything else done faster.